Welcome to OAA Now, your home for Oakland Activities Association news and information. Here's your host, Sammy Taormina.
Welcome to a special OAA Now football preview show. This is the Gold/Kettering Mott preview here. I am Sammy Taormina, blogger around the OAA, the host of the Last Three Brain Cells, and the host between Taorminas and Orion Television. I'd like to welcome those watching on the Local Voice and SoundCloud, and those watching on Orion Television and also on YouTube. This week we're going to preview the Gold Division, along with Waterford Kettering and Waterford Mott. Next week we're going to preview the Blue Division. 2 weeks we're going to preview the White Division. And in 3 weeks we're going to preview the Red Division. So let's start off with our two future members of the OAA. We're going to go with Waterford Kettering first, the captains. Waterford Kettering last season really struggled defensively. 360 points allowed last year, 40 points per game last year. They only scored 14 points a game last year. And under new coach Brian Barnes, Kettering really found their strides late in the year. But, they've had a lot of close games, a lot of close losses, and just putting the program together. So Waterford Kettering was not at Media Day. Of course, as I mentioned, they are not a member of the OAA as of yet. They're going to be joining the conference this winter. But I did catch up with Coach Brian Barnes on the podcast talking about the captains of Waterford Kettering. What is your expectations this year?
Yeah, I'm going to give you some coach speak, Sammy. I mean, obviously
Good. I'm willing to take it.
Okay, like every coach who talks to you, they're going to tell you like they want to be a playoff team and a playoff program consistently, no doubt. We want to reach our ceiling, whatever that is. I think our ceiling potentially is a playoff team this year. And there's a lot of reasons for that. We want to be a better team at the end of the year than we are in the beginning, and we fully expect that to happen. We're about to have our first real heavy, like last year we had camp, and literally in the next 45 minutes, we're going to have our first heavy team, workout, and I can't wait to see our guys get after it. And like I said, we're night and day ahead of where we were this time a year ago, and that gets us pretty excited. So our goal is to play meaningful games at the end of the season that have playoff implications, and I fully expect that to happen.
When you look at the captains this season, the schedule is very interesting. Of course, I mentioned Kettering's in their final year of the Lakes Valley Conference. They do open up the year against Walled Lake Central. Of course, Kettering won that one last year at home. I know when you look at that matchup, it's a very interesting matchup. Of course, Jeff Glynn is the offensive coordinator, the new offensive coordinator at Walled Lake Central. Of course, we know what he likes to bring over, with the Vikings. Obviously, you look at Walled Lake Central, more of a spread with Coach Jeff Glynn. So it'll be an interesting matchup there for Coach Barnes and the captains to open up the year. Week 2, they take on South Lyon. The Lions, of course, obviously is a team that, perennial. They've done really well as of late in the Lakes Valley. Last year, they were around 500 last year. They didn't make the playoffs last year, but I expect the Lions to be much better. It'll be a tough match for Waterford Kettering to take on the Lions of South Lyon. Week 3, they take on Milford. Milford is probably going to be one of the most experienced teams that they've had to deal with this year. Milford's a very good team. They lost a lot of talent last year, but they do got their quarterback back. And this is a very dangerous Milford team that they're going to have to deal with. Week 4, they take on South Lyon East. Of course, the Cougars were a playoff team last year, so it should be a really interesting matchup between the captains and the Cougars. Week 5, they take on the Eagles of White Lake Lakeland. When you look at Lakeland, obviously they lost a lot of talent last year, but Lakeland, they will always reload. They're well coached, so it'll be a tough match for Waterford Kettering there. Week 7, they take on Walled Lake Western. Walled Lake Western arguably is going to be the favorite in the Lakes Valley Conference. Actually, week 6, my bad. The Warriors, they're going to obviously be the favorite in the Lakes Valley Conference. So it'll be really interesting to see how that one goes. This is a difficult match for Waterford Kettering, obviously. Then week 7, they take on Livonia Clarenceville. I think this is their homecoming. And they got to go to Livonia. It should be an interesting matchup. I know how good Livonia Clarenceville is. So it'll be really interesting to see how that one goes. Week 8, they take on Walled Lake Northern. That could be a high-scoring game, especially Walled Lake Northern last year was really bad defensively last year. And also, there could be an even-Steven matchup between those two, between the Knights and the Captains. And then week 9, the Meat Bowl. the battle for the pirate ship for the sail with Waterford Mott. They play on a Saturday afternoon at 1 o'clock. That should be a fun matchup. It always is. Last year, Kettering had a chance to make the playoffs. All they had to do was beat Waterford Mott. They couldn't do it. They lost 13-9 last year, causing Kettering a trip to playoffs. So Kettering, when I look at this team here, I expect Kettering to be a playoff team this year, especially it's Coach Barnes' second year with the program, and usually, obviously, with new teams, obviously, year one has always been the transition year, but when they go to year two, that's when everything puts together. And I think for Coach Brian Barnes, that's where I think it's going to be for them, is that transition. And I think, a lot of people are getting comfortable with that program there at Kettering. And I think Kettering's poised to make a big jump, especially with their past. And I think with them, I think they're going to make some noise this year in the Lakes Valley Conference. And then let's look at at Kettering's arch rival, Waterford Mott. When you look at the Corsairs, last season was really unusual for them. This is a team that missed the playoffs. They had some changes. Obviously, their coach Chris Farr left to go to become the defensive coordinator at Davison. So Trajan Say comes to Waterford Mott, takes over for Coach Farr. Say, of course, brings state championship experience. He was part of that state championship team at Orchard Lake St. Mary's. So I caught up with Coach Shea on the podcast talking about the Corsairs. You looked at the job and Waterford Mott was open. So what persuaded you to take the coaching job at Waterford Mott?
Well, the funny thing is I had talked to Coach Farr a few times about coming over to Mott. I had followed Mott for years. My dad used to run the Pontiac Panthers, so I knew somewhat of the program, some of the kids that were in the program. I kind of know what Coach Farr was about and what he built up over there at Mott. When he stepped away, for me, it just was kind of perfect timing, being closer to home, being from Pontiac, and then just getting a crack at becoming a head coach, especially right off of a state championship. I just thought it was perfect timing. It was a perfect fit for me at that time.
And this is going to be really interesting for you. I mean, next year you guys are coming into the OAA. You're going to be I think, in my opinion, the first coach to be in 3 different leagues in 3 years. So I want to. that's probably the most and I want to see what your thoughts was when you heard the news about Waterford Mott coming into the OAA next season. What was your thoughts?
I was actually pretty excited. In high school, when I transferred from Brother Rice, I went back home to Pontiac, so I actually played in the OAA. And then, like I said, being able to kind of play some teams where I know, more of the players and the coaches. I'm not all the way familiar with the LVC, but with the OAA, I kind of know the lay of the land. So for me, it's a little bit more comfortable coming back to the OAA.
When you look at Waterford Mott, they returned some key players, Gino Sheets and Max Van Niersen. That is 2 big keys for Waterford Mott. And you look at, of course, offensively, this team really struggled last year, and I think a lot of that was injuries that really cost them that year. When you look at Waterford Mott's schedule, it's interesting. They open up the year at Wall Lake Northern. That should be an interesting matchup. And I know with Waterford Mott, they got that week 2 game circled on September 5th when they take on Milford. That's going to be a really interesting game there. Milford obviously got the quarterback back. It's going to be a difficult matchup. And then week 3, could that be the Lakes Valley Conference Championship game? That could be very much possible because I expect Waterford Mott to be better. And now you take on a Wall Lake Western team, who's loaded with proven talent under former pharmacy coach Corey Soroch. So that'll be a really difficult matchup for Waterford Mott. But it could be a really tight game. And then September 19th, they take on Pontiac Notre Dame Preparatory. Of course, Coach Shea is very familiar with the Pontiac area. The Irish, we know, I think they're the defending state champions in Division 7. So I think but they have been a proven powerhouse. So that'll be a very interesting matchup with Waterford Mott against the Pontiac Notre Dame Preparatory Mayor's Academy Fighting Irish. So that'll be very interesting there. Week 5, they take on Wall Lake Central. Like I said, of course, Wall Lake Central one of those teams that's been really struggling a lot as of late. Waterford Mott, they could be really, I think they could be rolling it by this point. And then week number 6, they take on the Lions of South Lyon. That should be a really interesting matchup, to say the least there. Week number 7, they take on the Cougars of South Lyon East. And I think that should be really interesting there. And then week 8, they take on White Lake Lakeland. Of course, the Eagles, very good team, as you know, well coached as always. And then week 9, of course, the Meat Bowl with Waterford Kettering. Of course, Waterford Mott won that one 13-9 last year over the Captains. So that should be really interesting. I know the game this year's at Kettering, so it should be a fun year. I think if you're a Waterford Mott fan, you're looking for redemption. Of course, offensively, I expect this team to be much better offensively. Defensively, I expect this team to be better. For Kettering and Mott, their future in the Lakes Valley Conference, I have them both being in the playoffs, both being at 5-4. Mott 4-4 overall, Kettering at 3-5. But I expect both Waterford Kettering and Waterford Mott to be in the playoffs this year. Both teams I am at 5-4. Division-wise, I'll have that on the blog at SaginawBay4650 at blogspot.com. So that's my take on both Waterford schools this year. I expect both Waterford teams to be very good, to be in the mix, especially Waterford Mott. I think Waterford Mott right now is projected to be second in the Lakes Valley behind Wall Lake Western. Kettering, I expect to be able to pack this year in the Lakes Valley Conference. So we'll see what happens with them. Now let's go from Waterford Kettering, from the Waterford schools. Let's go to the Gold Division. Let's start off with the Yellow Jackets of Avondale. Avondale, this is a team that's got a lot of athletes, a lot of proven talent, a lot of success, but coaching stability has been the question mark. So now you have Jim Carlisle coming in the program. He's the program's 5th coach in 10 years. So here's Coach Carlisle at the podium talking about the Yellow Jackets.
Good afternoon, and it's a privilege and honor to be here at the OAA Media Conference. It's my first year at Avondale here, and I just want to piggyback on what they said about the OAA being a great conference with players and coaches and teams. I was ambassador the past 3 years, and by far the OAA is going to be a lot better than the Greater Thumb Conference, just on logistics alone. It'll be nice to go to a away game 20 minutes away instead of an hour and a half commute there and an hour and a half commute back. So we're really excited. I'd like to introduce my players and my assistant head coach and defensive coordinator, Ben Scott. I've got senior running back and linebacker Anthony Burton. I've got senior O-line, D-line, Paul Sherbarth. Junior quarterback Brock Taylor. Junior center offensive lineman is Vance Flores. Senior wide receiver David Edmonds. And then senior offensive lineman, defensive lineman Caleb Johnson. So these young men have worked hard during the summer. We're really excited where we've been and where we can go. Offensively, we'll be running spread offense with some power run concepts. Defensively, we'll be in 40 fronts. Brock's going to do a good job kicking for us at special teams, hopefully. So we're looking forward to that. Hopefully we don't have to punt too much, or we enjoy the kickoffs and the PATs more than anything else. But we've had a great summer, like I said. The schedule's going to be pretty tough. I ain't going to lie to you. I mean, our first 3 games was brutal. We go to Cedar Springs, and then we got to see Holmes, who's really, really good, and then we got Lutheran North. So we got our work cut out for us. So we're looking forward to the challenge, and we're ready to get at it. So again, thanks for being here, and thanks for having us. A big OAA fan now. I'll be wishing you guys best of luck, except if you're playing me that night, then I'm not. But again, have a safe summer and have a great season. Thank you.
When you look at the Yellow Jackets, obviously Coach Carlisle, he's been around the entire state, of course. He was at Imlay City. He was at Vassar. Of course, he lives in Novi. So when you look at Coach Carlisle, he's been around, and obviously throughout the entire state, through mid-Michigan and obviously into Oakland County. So I did catch up with Coach Carlisle to talk about his Yellow Jackets on the podcast. We got the coach of the Avondale Yellow Jackets, Coach Jim Carlisle, who is in his first year with the program. Coach, thank you for calling in this week.
Yeah, no problem. Appreciate it.
When you look at when you look at what drove you to take the Avondale job, after some successful time in the Thumb area. What drove you to take over this program?
What made me want to take the Avondale job?
Yep.
Well, first of all, one of my mentors, Elliot Uselak, he told me, before you take a job, you got to look at three things. Number one, you got to look at facilities, you got to look at the athletes, and you got to look at the schedule. He goes, if they all check off, then you need to take the job. And they all checked off big time.
When you look at, of course, let's talk about your past coaching experience. You were at Imlay City from 2018 to 2022, and then you took the Vassar job. Talk about the differences between those two jobs, the Imlay City job and also the Vassar jobs.
Not much difference at all, just geographically and logistically, a lot of driving to go everywhere. Kids were about the same, to be quite honest with you. It was a direct parallel move in comparison. Not one team was better than the other.
And then you look at, of course, coming into the OAA. What differences have you seen between the Greater Thumb Conference and the OAA?
Well, I know one thing. We go to a away game, I can be there in 20 minutes. In the Greater Thumb Conference, it'd be an hour and a half commute. It'd take us literally an hour and a half to get to Harbor Beach. So just things like that. Going to scout and everything, you'd be out there all day. I live in Novi, so I was driving an hour and a half one way for practice, 3-hour commute every day. Now, here at Avondale, I'm 22 minutes away.
Before I let you go, Coach, what is the expectation this year at Avondale?
Well, the expectation is, our three goals. We want to win league, win district, and get to the regionals. That's simple.
Okay, Coach. Coach Jim Carlisle, I'd like to thank you for calling into the podcast this week. Wish you the best of luck this season, and good luck against Cedar Springs in a couple weeks.
Hey, appreciate it.
Yep. When you look at Avondale, you look at Avondale, of course, obviously Coach Carlisle coming in there. He really didn't have any control over the schedule this year. That was left by former coach Bob Meyer, who stepped down at the end of the year. After Avondale making the postseason, they ran into Walled Lake Western both years, following to the Warriors. So let's look at the schedule here for Avondale. Open up the year. You gotta go to Cedar Springs to take on the Redhawks. Cedar Springs, last year went to Avondale. They had to play that game between Auburn Hills and Troy Athens because Avondale had a power outage. Cedar Springs, with their wing T offense, went into Auburn Hills, won that one 21-14. So now Avondale has to make the return trip to Cedar Springs, going up I-96 to Kent County. So that's going to be a really interesting matchup, and especially when you look at Avondale changing their offensive scheme, going back to more of the spread offense that Coach Jim Carlisle likes to do under Coach Steve Deutsch, under legendary Coach Steve Deutsch. Obviously, you look at, for Avondale fans, remembering that was the last time I remember when Avondale ran a spread offense. But when you look at week 2, they take on Birmingham Seaholm. That's a conflict of the veer, battle between the veer and the spread, so that should be really interesting there. I think the key in that one's going to be Avondale's defense. Can they hold? Can they play? Can they get Seaholm out of rhythm? Obviously, with Seaholm playing a veer, that's going to be very difficult there. Week 3, they take on Macomb Ludor North. Of course, Macomb Ludor North was a playoff team last year. Always in that tough Catholic League. As always, it's going to be a very difficult matchup, to say the least, there for them. Week 4, they take on Pontiac, and you look at Phoenix. It's an interesting matchup when you look at both schools being close by. I know the game this year's in Auburn Hills, so that should be a really interesting matchup there. And then week 5, I think it'll be interesting to see how Avondale matches up with Ferndale. Of course, that game being at Avondale. So that should be a really interesting matchup. Last season was 21-7 in favor of Avondale, beating Ferndale. Of course, that game last year had to go from Ferndale to Avondale, and wake up some incidents involving fans there. But that should be a really interesting matchup there with Avondale taking on Ferndale. Week number 6, they take on Royal Oak. Avondale has had Royal Oak's number in the past. So that should be really, and obviously a change in coaching style. That can be really interesting there. Week number 7, they take on Berkeley. Of course, the Bears and Yellow Jackets, we know, have had some battles in the past. So that should be interesting there. Week 8, they host Groves, and that's a difficult matchup. When I talked to Coach Carlisle about having to play Groves, it's a difficult matchup for them, considering, Groves in the white. And then week 9, they get to go out to Carleton. They get to go out to Monroe County to take on the Jets of Carleton Airport. Of course, Avondale won last year against the Jets 28-7 at Dick By Field. And now they got to make that return trip to Carleton into Monroe County. So for Avondale, the schedule looks daunting, especially week 1 and week 9, where they got to go on the road to within the state. They got to go west into Kent County to play Cedar Springs. Week 9, they got to go to Monroe County to play Carleton Airport. And then, of course, you look at that rest of that schedule. They got to play Seaholmes on there, Macomb Lutheran North's on there, and that's not even counting the league. And then also Groves is on there. So really difficult schedule for Avondale. I know they got the athletes to be competitive. Quarterback in Brock Taylor. Obviously, you look at the success that Carlisle had with over at Vassar. Their quarterback last year threw over 3,300 yards last year at Vassar. So if there's something that Coach Carlisle knows how to develop, he knows how to develop quarterbacks, and especially in an offense like this, what he's going to run in the spread. I expect big things this year for Avondale. I just think the question mark for me is going to be that defense and also that schedule. So a lot of players to look for, watch out for. Bryce Collins is one of them. Obviously, they got others as well. So I think Avondale, if things go right, if they adjust to the spread, they could be in for a big year. So we'll see what happens. Now let's go from Avondale. Let's go to the Berkeley Bears. The Bears last year under Coach Casey Humes had a really tough year. Going 2-7, going through a transition year. This is year 2 for Coach Humes. So here he is at the podium talking about the Bears.
I want to say thank you guys for welcoming us out back to the OAA Media Showcase. Second year as the Berkeley High School head coach. Last year we went 2-7. We're looking to change the program with the seniors we have this year. We have about 18 or 19 seniors. Senior offensive lineman, defensive lineman Anthony Brackle. Senior offensive, defensive lineman Colin Richardson. Senior offensive tight end and defensive lineman Bobby Wade. Eli Corey is a senior captain, 3-year captain, going to be a 4th-year captain this year. He plays defensive back for us. He also plays linebacker and running back. And then we have Lucas Schwinn, senior as well. He plays receiver and defensive back for us. This year, like I said before, we're just looking to build on what we started last year. With this being my second year, I'm hoping to increase the win total and kind of make a push to win our league this year. And hopefully this year we can try to host a playoff game. These guys have put in a lot of work. Since freshman, I've been able to coach these guys as their JV coach to start, and then now as their varsity coach now. It's been a pleasure. They've been working really hard, and I think they have the rest of the guys in a good position to get camp rolling this next week and to kind of, make some noise in this OAA goal. I think that's really the outlook we have so far. We got a couple young guys that'll be able to participate and give us a little boost on our offense and defense as well. So it's just about for us building and continuing to grow this program. We're probably the smallest outside of Pontiac as far as player enrollment. We're just trying to grow our program. I know we lose a lot of kids to different sports with us being a major soccer team, but to have these guys here who've been 4-year football players, I think it just speaks to what we're growing here at Berkeley High School, and we just hope to continue to do that. Thank you.
When you look at the Bears this year, of course, one thing that I've noticed is mental toughness. Obviously, going into year 2 under Coach Humes, obviously Coach Humes was a former player at Berkeley. You look at, of course, it wasn't long ago that Berkeley was really successful as a football power, was it? And then they really had a downward swing. So I talked to Coach Humes in the podcast talking about the state of Berkeley football. What is your expectations this year for Berkeley football?
My expectations for Berkeley football is obviously to improve from where we were last year. My expectations for the guys are high, so honestly, I expect to win the league. I think that that's something that our seniors have as their goal. None of them have been able to say that they are league title champions in the OAA Gold. So I think for my own self and for the seniors, I think that's a great goal. If not winning the league, our ultimate goal is to be able to make it into the playoffs.
And
Our achieving goals would be to have our first 2 games in the playoffs at Hurley. So we kind of got them staggered in the realistic goals, a little harder to attain, and then ones that we're really going to have to push the pedal to the floor to attain.
when you look at, of course, the Bears, I know the goal this year for them is having a deep playoff run. They do return a lot of players. I know one player wasn't at Media Day, Ben Bullock, has been mentioned a lot with the Bears. They got Eli Corey at quarterback. Their line is young, but they're going to be solid. I think Berkeley could be in line for a better year. And when you look at the schedule, it looks like they could be. Open up the year, tough matchup week 1 with Livonia Franklin, of course. The Patriots, we know, has been a successful team in Division II. So it'll be really interesting to see how Berkeley mans up in that one, taking on a very good Patriots team. Week 2, they get to take on the Knights of Oak Park, and that's going to be a very interesting matchup. See how the Bears defensively match up with Oak Park's experience and also their athletes. So that should be really interesting there. Week 3, they take on Pontiac. Of course, Pontiac, oddly enough, Pontiac and Berkeley, they've had some games where they've split. I mean, Pontiac a couple years ago knocked off Berkeley in the regular, I think it was the 23 season. I think Berkeley got Pontiac back last year. So that should be an interesting matchup there. Week 4, of course, weeks 4 and 5 are the rivalry games, obviously. Berkeley takes on Ferndale week 4, of course. That's going to be an interesting matchup to see where Berkeley, how they measure up against a team that's very athletic like Ferndale. They are very athletic, and they're also very competitive as well. Week 5, this is one of my favorite trophy games, the Battle of Woodward. The Battle of Woodward, and I love this rivalry because this is a game where you have both communities, just flat out just don't like each other. And I know Berkeley fans chant, to Royal Oak fans, Royal Oak joke, and I know Royal Oak fans like to return it to Berkeley, obviously. And, the fan section can get rowdy, the competitive nature can get rowdy. Berkeley last year took back the Battle Woodward Trophy, winning last year at over Royal Oak. Now this year's game, it's at Royal Oak, so this should be really interesting there. And then week number 6, Berkeley gets to go down to Jackson Northwest to take on the Mounties. And, the Mounties, they're a good team. They're not bad. They're not bad in the Interstate 8 Conference. Obviously, last year they went to Hurley and knocked off Berkeley. I think that was 28-7. I know it was not a pretty game for Berkeley. So that's going to be an interesting matchup with the Bears and the Mounties. I know I'm going to have to talk to my good friend Joey Tysick about that one if he's ever heard of a team named the Mounties. So it'll be interesting. I know Berkeley's got to travel down to Jackson Northwest to take on the Mounties. Week number 7, Berkeley takes on Avondale. Should be a fun matchup. It should be an interesting matchup. Berkeley's experience against Avondale's athletes. And then week 8, oh boy, that's going to be a tough one for Berkeley. Going to take on the Cougars of Stony Creek. And it is a difficult matchup. Stony Creek likes to run the ball a lot. We know Coach Rick Powell. He's going to have that team rolling. And that should be a really interesting matchup for the Bears taking on the Cougars. And then week 9, taking on Madison Heights Lampier, Coach Roy Ozarowski. Last year, Lampier went into Hurley, knocked off Berkeley. Now, Berkeley's going to make the return trip to take on the Rams. And that's going to be a difficult match for Berkeley, going to Madison Heights to take on the Rams. And I think, when you look at the Bears, a lot of experience back. Experience matters, but it comes down to what Coach Corliss said on the podcast, mental mindset. And that's going to be the key for Berkeley this year is the mental mindset, the mental psyche. That's the key for Berkeley. If they can get off to a great start, win some big games, then I think Berkeley could be a really dangerous team. So I think, when it comes down to Berkeley, experience matters, but if they get out to a bad start, they could be in some trouble. And that's going to be the key for Berkeley going forward, is can they overcome, that slow start? And that's going to be the key for them this year. And if they do, Berkeley's going to be going up on the upward swing when you look at this team. Let's go now from Berkeley to Ferndale. Of course, Ferndale was a team that made the playoffs last year under Coach Eric Royal. Excuse me. But they had a lot of experience that was lost. So they went out and Coach Royal stepped down from coaching the program, and Donovan Jackson takes over the program. So here is Coach Donovan Jackson talking about the Eagles at the podium.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Rochester, Coach Vernon, for having us. I'm just honored to be here. I'm excited to be in the OAA. This is my first year back in the OAA. I was a defensive coordinator for 3 years at Ferndale High School back in 2018. After that, went to Cass Tech, won a state championship last year. I'm here back in the OAA looking to do great things. Just honored to be here. I'm excited. It's one of the best leagues in the state. I'm honored to be here. With me today, I have my players. I'm going to let and my associate head coach, Coach Max Green, and my associate coach, Coach Armand Restpress. I'm going to give a little of my players opportunity to introduce themselves.
Jermaine Bynum, quarterback, class of 26.
Juan Schroeder, online dealer.
Frederick, safety, quarterback. Ayante London, wide receiver and corner. Jeremiah Jones, class of 2026, all line tackle, D-line right tackle.
Devin Reiser, wide receiver safety.
Isaiah Pinell, cornerback. Earl Cochran, corner receiver. Ivan Edwards, cornerback.
Well, we look and we see 10 players up here with me, wonder why we have 10 players. Each and every one of these players, they earned the right to stand here today. So we come in at camp next week, we're going to see who our captaincy is. I'm just excited for the new season. A little bit about Ferndale coming over from last season. As I stated, we won the state championship at Cass Tech. I'm looking to bring that state championship caliber to Ferndale High School. That's what we're looking to do. This year, we're young. We graduated a lot of people from the last year. So we're building with these guys right here. We're looking to, just like I tell my guys, we're not just coming out here to work this hard to come in second place. We're looking to win the league. We're looking to chase out the state championship, even if that's not this year, in the future. So those are some of the goals that we got this year. We're looking to build a culture of accountability. At Ferndale now, it's just not about football. It's bigger than just football for us. I'm looking to grow each and every one of these young men to men. Do great things in the community, game changers in life. So that's just a little bit about Ferndale program. I thank y'all for having us here. We're excited for the football season. Good luck to each and every one of y'all. Stay healthy. Have the best season you can.
When you look at Ferndale this year, and I look at Coach Donovan Jackson's team, I know he's been talking about championship experience, and he does bring a lot of that when he was at Detroit Cass Tech. Obviously, a Ferndale alum as well. So Jackson brings a lot of experience. I know the team he's got is very young, and they like to play young. So I caught up with Coach Jackson, interviewing him, talking about this young team that he's got. Let me go Donovan first. Let me do Donovan first. I got the coach of the Eagles, Coach Donovan Jackson. Coach, you look at this team, you take over this team, so talk about how the transition's been going for you.
The transition been going smoothly. I mean, as soon as I got the job, put my head down and immediately got to work. So there's no time for the glitz and glamour. It's just been time for hard work and dedication. And as soon as I got the job, we got it right after it. So we're seeing the fruits of our labor now. So we're right where we need to be going into fall camp. So just looking forward for an exciting season.
Talk about, of course, the quarterback situation. Obviously, I mean, we mentioned we met most of the team here. So talk about how you guys are coming into the year trying to make some headways this year in this division.
Our quarterback situation, I think we're in good hands this year. Pretty balanced. He can do both, can run, can pass. Pretty accurate, pretty poised, confident. So I think we're in good hands there for the most part.
What's your expectations here, Coach?
Expectations for this year is to just, raise a well-rounded gentleman, young man, grow them in man, win the OAA gold. And just like I tell my players, we don't wake up every day, come practice every day to go for second place. We want to win in everything we do. So we want to chase the gold. That's OAA gold championship, district championship, regional championship, and the state championship.
Thank you really much, Coach.
I appreciate you, Sammy.
Okay, Coach Flynn. When you look at the Eagles this year, and I think, and I do have a podcast with Coach Donovan Jackson. I did talk to him on the podcast as well. So when you look, I will have that link on the blog at secondbay4050 at blogspot.com as well. So when you look at the schedule for Ferndale, it's interesting. I mean, week 1, they open up with Roy Ozorowski and the the Rams and Madison Heights Lamphere week 1. That's going to be an interesting game. I mean, Lamphere has some experience coming back, obviously being in D4. One of the top teams in D4. They were one of the top seeds last year, but they were upset in the playoffs last year. So that should be an interesting game between the Eagles and the Rams week 1. Week 2, they take on Troy. And when I look at this matchup here, I think this is a matchup for Ferndale. I think they can win this game. I really do. I really like where they're at athletically. I think, they match up well with the team that, is replacing a lot. And, and I think Troy, it's going to be an interesting matchup between the Colts and the Eagles. And I think that could be a really interesting matchup. Week 3, they go into league play, take on the Ravens of Royal Oak first. This is going to be interesting because obviously it's a rivalry game. When I talk to Coach Jackson, I know that, rivalries, you know what I mean? I know he doesn't really focus on them much, but it should be a really interesting matchup anyway with Royal Oak taking on Ferndale. Of course, that game is at Ferndale, and that should be a really interesting and fun matchup there. Week 4, they take on Berkeley. Berkeley's an interesting one for Ferndale. Obviously, it's a rivalry game. We know how Coach Terrence Hughes, obviously, it should be a good coaching matchup, I think, between Donovan and Coach Humes, and I think that should be a really interesting matchup there between the Eagles and the Bears, and that should be a good matchup there. I mean, coaching matchup is good, and I think it should be a fun matchup there. Week number 5, they take on Avondale. I think that game's at Auburn Hills this year, so that should be really interesting. Of course, at Ferndale won 28. Ferndale lost last year to Avondale in a game where it had to be switched between Ferndale and Auburn Hills because of some shenanigans in the fans. Week number 6, they take on Pontiac. That should be a very interesting matchup there. And then they go the final 3 weeks, the Wayne County Tour. Week 7, take on River Rouge. Got a new coach, Jermaine Crowell. They're loaded. One of the favorites to win D3. They are loaded. And then, week number 8, take on Harper Woods, the Pioneers. Well-coached, well-oiled machine. We know how Coach Oden is. They are loaded. And they're one of the odds-on favorites to win D4. And then they close out the year, week 9, against Detroit Renaissance, take on the Phoenix. Ferndale, when you look at, I think they match up well with the Phoenix. I think out of the 3 teams in that Wayne County gauntlet, I think Detroit Renaissance is the best chance for them to win those games. I think Rouge and Harper Woods are going to be really tough games. So when I look at Ferndale, quarterback looks like they're settled there. Line looks like they're settled there. The only thing I'm concerned about with Ferndale is their depth. And if they get in the playoffs, they're in Division II. And the reason why I say that is because the merger with Ferndale and Ferndale U, of course, University, of course, is in the league, but Ferndale and Ferndale U both co-op. So the MHA combines the enrollment of both Ferndale and Ferndale U, which puts them at, I think, around 1,100. And they are in Division II for the playoffs. So it'll be interesting to see. I know Coach Jackson's very talks about building a state championship culture, winning a state championship. I thought to myself, I don't know if they can win in year one, but I think there's some good pathways on there, and I think Ferndale could be a very dangerous team this season because of the athleticism they got, because of the obviously with Coach Jackson there. The only concern I have is he pushing them to go far too quickly? You know what I mean? And I think that's the only question mark that I have because transition periods have to happen, and they have to happen during the year. And I think for Ferndale, they're in that transition period right now. They could surprise some people, make a big run, but But, they're going to have to go through that transition period that happen during the year. And if they do get in the playoffs, D2, you're looking at probably staring at Orchard Lake St. Mary's, possibly maybe staring at a Warren de La Salle, maybe staring at, so those type teams, they're staring at. It could be a really dangerous road for Ferndale. But for them, they got to win a playoff game, And they have not won a playoff game in a long while. So if you're Ferndale, Coach Donovan Jackson, just taking baby steps. win the division, then you got to win a playoff game, then everything else will take care of itself. So that's my challenge for Coach Donovan Jackson Eagles is to get to the playoffs, win a playoff game, and then we'll go from there. So that's my challenge for Coach Donovan Jackson and the Eagles this upcoming season. So we'll see what happens. I think Ferndale will be a very dangerous team this year. And it looks like they could make some headways this year in this division. So let's go now from Ferndale. Let's go to the Ravens of Royal Oak. And you look at the Ravens. They've had a lot of tough times lately with this program. So when I look at Royal Oak this year, they did win last year against Clawson, hopefully to get their program in the upswing. So here is Coach Colin Campbell at Media Day talking about the Ravens.
Good afternoon, everybody. Coach Colin Campbell, honored to be here. Really appreciate Coach Vernon here and Rochester for having us. So Royal Oak High School, really honored to be up here and be able to work with the guys that are here with me. So we have Ben Ailes, quarterback for us, Colin Bibbs, offensive line and linebacker, and then Javian Johnson. He is a defensive back and wide receiver for us. We're really excited to compete. We know it's a deep league. It's an incredibly tough league. Every week is a ton of fun to play, a ton of fun to compete against some of the best opponents in the state. And so we just hope that everybody stays healthy and is safe for this season, and we're excited to get after it in the OAA. Thank you.
When you look at Royal Oak's season, the lines are my biggest concern with the Ravens. And obviously, there is a big reason why. They got experience coming back, but the lines are a big concern. So I talked to Coach Campbell about the strength of the Ravens heading into the season. I hate to put you on the spot here, but what's it going to take for Royal Oak to be, the expectation, the playoffs? Obviously, to bring the postseason to Royal Oak, what's it going to take for you guys to get into the postseason this year?
No, it's a great question. It's going to take work. There's, there's no other way I can explain it other than it's going to take continuous work and it's attention to detail all the time. And that's what we're coaching. That's what we're preaching. It's just this continual attack of our process and pushing each person on our coaching staff, in our program, on the team to get better and better and better every single day. And if we continue to attack our process and trust in it and really continue to collectively push ourselves and buy into that work and just move things along, 1% by 1% every day, that's how we get back to the playoffs. It's this continuation of relentless hard work. And there's not going to be a shortcut. There's not going to be anything that will, change that magically overnight. It's going to be continuing to do that work and do that process. And that's what we're working towards.
Before I let you go, Coach, what is your expectation this year for Royal Oak football? When you look at the Ravens this season, you look at Royal Oak, you got a lot of experience coming back. You got a lot of young proven talent coming back. There's a lot of excitement at Royal Oak. So what is your expectation this year for the Ravens this upcoming season?
Our expectation is to go out and compete every game, every week, every quarter, every minute of it. Our expectation is to compete. And I agree with you. There's a ton of excitement, and we're excited. The kids are excited, and so again, we're ready to go out and compete.
When you look at Royal Oak, obviously going out and ready to compete, and he exactly said, Coach Campbell said it. That's what's going to take for them to get back to playoffs. It's work ethic and everything. You know what I mean? They've got a lot of work to do at Royal Oak, and it starts with the schedule. You look at the schedule this year. They open up the year with St. Clair Shores Lakeshore. This is an interesting matchup, of course. This is we know how good the Lakeshore is, the Shoreans. Obviously, this is a very interesting matchup. I mean, obviously, you look at St. Clair Shores, Lakeshore, they're not a bad team, but it'll be an interesting matchup for them there. Week 2, they take on Bloomfield Hills and Coach Scott Merchant. And this should be an interesting matchup because these are two teams that are, right now trying to find their way, going up in the division, going like trying to find where they're at. And I think this is a big gut check game, week 2 for both teams as Bloomfield Hills takes on Royal Oak. That should be a fun matchup there for the Ravens. I mean, quarterback match should be interesting between Ben Ellis and Maracas Colosable. So that should be really interesting there. Line play could be a key factor in that game, and that does not favor Royal Oak in that one. So it'll be interesting to see how that one goes. Week 3 for Royal Oak, tough one with Ferndale. Obviously, Ferndale's got all that experience. Royal Oak, it should be a really interesting matchup, see how they match up, especially at Ferndale, and that's going to be a tough matchup for Royal Oak going to Ferndale, take on the Eagles. Week number 4, they take on Livonia Clarenceville. Interesting matchup with the Trojans. And I think that should be really interesting to see how Royal Oak matches up with them. Livonia Clarenceville is an improved team. It should be a really interesting matchup there between the Ravens and the Trojans. And then week 5, the Battle Woodward. No doubt about it. Over at Royal Oak, I think it's their homecoming. Berkeley and Royal Oak, that's going to be nuts over there. Berkeley last year took back the Battle Woodward Trophy. Of course, if you want to know what the Battle Woodward Trophy is, of course, it's the street sign with Lexington Boulevard, which is where Royal Oak is, and then Catawba is where Berkeley is. So it should be a fun matchup. I know both schools don't like each other. I know both fan bases don't like each other. And then week 6, they take on Avondale. That should be an interesting one. Of course, Avondale knocked off Royal Oak last season. Week number 7, they take on Pontiac. Like I said, it's going to be an interesting matchup, to say the least. Of course, that game I think could be really interesting, really competitive. Pontiac, we know, has been a team that's been struggling as of late. But, they're well coached under Coach Jefferson. So it should be really interesting there. Week 8, oh boy, Rochester. Improved team. Rochester is probably the most scary, probably what I call probably the most dangerous team in the white this year, because they got the quarterback back, they got a really good running attack, line's good. They're solid. Rochester will be a very tough matchup for Royal Oak. So I think that game's going to be at Royal Oak, so that should be really interesting there. And then week 9, Royal Oak's got to travel to Clawson to take on the Trojans after Royal Oak basically took Clawson out of the playoffs last year with the 21-7 win last year at Royal Oak. So it should be an interesting matchup. I know Royal Oak School's YouTube page is going to be really loading up with Royal Oak football this year, especially when you look at the schedule they got. So Royal Oak this year, when I look at this team, a lot of question marks. Experienced team. Line's a big concern. So that's something to really watch at with Royal Oak. I think this team, they could surprise some people, but they've got some questions. So Coach Colin Campbell, that team, that program, there's a lot of question marks this year at Royal Oak, and I know they're going to rely a lot on the running game. Their rushing attack should be really good. Passing game's going to be the key for Royal Oak if they want to make some success, if they want to get back to playoffs this year. As Coach Campbell said in the podcast, it's all about work, attacking that process, and it's going to be a challenge for them going forward. So that'll be really interesting to see how Royal Oak does this upcoming season. Now we go from Royal Oak to the last team in the division. You got the Pontiac Phoenix. When you look at the Phoenix, last season they took a bit of a step back. They lose some talent. They lost some key pieces. But for Coach Wendell Jefferson, it's about attacking the process. So here is at the podium talking about Pontiac.
Third year with the program. I want the guys to introduce themselves first.
Marquise McCray, senior, linebacker.
Fahim Jeffrey, receiver, senior. Deontay Jones, senior, linebacker. Terrell Chapman, left tackle, D. Alfred East Nancy, tight end, 26. Bryce Brown, senior, linebacker.
Dallas Coleman, D-line, O-line.
Thank you. So those of you who have been here since my first year, One of the things that I said I wanted to establish was the culture of the program in Pontiac. Establish a culture that leads to winning and success. So I brought these guys up here because they're all seniors, and they've all exhibited the traits that you need to establish a great culture. They're leaders on the field and in the classroom, and they work extremely hard. So these are the guys, when you see the improvement that we make this year, these are the guys that drove that improvement. So I just wanted to make sure that I acknowledge them. As you know, I don't speak about wins or losses. I speak about improvement. And that's all we focus on. If we do everything we can to improve, then the wins will come. And that's all I'm concerned about. The grades, the grade point average at Pontiac High School has went up, and it's all because of the culture that these guys and my assistant coaches have set for everyone in that school. So that's all I have to say. Coach Vernon, thank you again. This is a great event. I look forward to coming, even if I turn in my paper late. I look forward to coming, and I wish everyone a year full of health and success, even when you play against us, except for I want you to lose. So that's it. All right.
When you look at the Phoenix this year, it is about improvement. And obviously, improvement it leads to success. And for Coach Jefferson, that's the challenge he has at Pontiac is, obviously, producing results on the field, but off the field, it looks like they're getting better and getting better for the long haul. So I caught up with Coach Jefferson to talk about the state of the Phoenix. I got the coach of Pontiac High School, Coach Wendell Jefferson. Coach, we talked about process and we talked in the podcast about it. How's the process been going for you guys?
It's been going great. It's been going great. These guys have been working real hard this whole summer, off season. I couldn't be happier.
Talk about that schedule. I mean, it's interesting. You open up with Pontiac A&T first. How's that schedule looking for you guys?
Actually, as I look at it, I like our chances. I really do. Only thing that concerns me about my team is not the talent, it's not the guys that we have playing, it's just depth. Being able to get these guys a good break to be able to perform on both sides of the ball.
What is your expectation this year, Coach?
Be better, just to be better. I don't do wins and losses. We'll win more games than we did last year, but I think we'll surprise quite a few people because of the work they've put in.
Thank you really much, Coach.
Thank you.
So I did also catch up with Coach Jefferson on the podcast as well. That's on the blog at saginaw50 at blogspot.com. If you want to take a look at it, I will have the previews on the blog as well, posted up later in the week. Let's look at Pontiac's schedule. I mean, you look at this team. Questions I have for Pontiac's the quarterback spot, but they got a lot. They got a lot of other things. The line's very good. Rushing attack looks good. But depth's a big concern when I look at with Pontiac. So when I look at that schedule coming up with Pontiac, open up the year week 1 with Pontiac Arts and Tech. Pontiac Arts and Tech's a pretty, it's a younger team. It's like a, up-and-coming team. So it should be an interesting matchup. Pontiac won their week 1 matchups the last 2 years. They knocked off Madison Heights Bishop Foley 2 years ago. And then last year they knocked off Detroit. I gotta remember it. Detroit, goodness, it's not taking my tongue, but they won both their week 1 matchups last year. So Pontiac, open up with Pontiac Arts and Tech. It's a close matchup, close distance matchup. Should be an interesting matchup there week 1. Week 2, they take on Troy Athens. Athens is loaded. They're gonna be loaded this year. Senior experience on both sides of the ball. Troy Athens expect to be better, but Pontiac's been competitive with Troy Athens in the past. So I expect that one to be another competitive game between the two teams. Week 3, they take on Berkeley. That's going to be a tough matchup for them. Obviously, Berkeley's got a lot of experience. Week 4, Avondale. They got to go to Auburn Hills. That's a difficult matchup. So that should be an interesting matchup there. I know the Berkeley game this year for them is at Pontiac, and I know the last time Berkeley went into Pontiac won that one against Berkeley. Avondale's going to be a more tougher task. Week 5, they take on Bloomfield Hills. Tough matchup for the Phoenix going up against the Coach Scott Merchant team. Obviously, it should be interesting to see how, both athletes match up. Obviously, Pontiac, we know how good their athletes are. Bloomfield Hills, a lot of unknowns, a lot of question marks with them. Week 6 is going to be a tough one for Pontiac going to play Ferndale. Ferndale, we know, it's loaded with athletes. So it'll be really interesting there. Week 7, they take on Royal Oak. It could be a competitive game there. I think that should be a very interesting one. Week 8, they take on the Warriors of Southfield Arts and Tech. A&T in the white, obviously. We don't know where they're going to be at heading into the final weeks of the year. Obviously, A&T's got a very difficult schedule, so we'll see how that one goes. And then week 9, of course, Ortonville Brandon takes on Pontiac. Obviously, Brad Zuby used to be at Pontiac. Zuby was the coach the last time Pontiac made the playoffs, which was in 2011. So it's an interesting matchup because I know it's sort of like a homecoming for Coach Zuby, taking on his former school. Pontiac, you know what I mean? We know it's had some tough times, but, this has been a team that's been up and coming under Coach Jefferson. The academics have been up. The process has been going up. And, of course, program strength is going to be the key for Pontiac going forward. So it'll be interesting to see what the Phoenix has this year, but I expect Pontiac to be right up there when it comes to with success and all that. It's just building the process, trusting in the process, and building talent. So we'll see what happens with Pontiac. I think Pontiac can be a team that's really a team on the upswing to watch as we head into the season. Now, without further ado, let's look at my projections. When I look at this is the first time a lot of people have released about the projections. I think you look at this division here. I think this division could get 2 teams in. I mean, when I look at Ferndale, obviously, could they be 6-3? Absolutely, it could be 6-3. I think 5-4 right now is a safe bet for them. But if I put them in the blog at 6-3, I think that'll be fine. But I think they're going to win this division. I just think that the athletes that Coach Jackson has, I think they're going to get the speed real quick. I think they're going to get that speed real quick. Berkeley, I think they got more experience than you think. I think Berkeley, obviously Coach Humes, I think they're going to figure it out mentally. I think that when I look at this team, I think they're going to find some ways. And I think Berkeley, if they can win a couple of those key games, which I think they can, I think they can make some noise. And I really do think they can make some noise with that group. Avondale, I don't know about with them. I mean, obviously, when you look at the coaches poll, obviously talking to Coach Carlisle, I just think the transition period has to happen during the year. But I also think the reason why I have them at 3-6 because the schedule. The schedule is absolutely brutal. Having to go to Cedar Springs, having to go to Carleton Airport, having to play Groves in the middle of the year and week 8, that's going to be really difficult for them. So I really think that's going to be a difficult matchup for Avondale. I think they could be in line for a difficult year. And I know Coach Carlisle's got a lot to prove this year. Obviously being 21-41 at both Lake City and also at Vassar. He's got a lot to prove there, but I just don't. But, year 1 to year 2, you know what I mean? I just don't know how, you look at that schedule, it's very tough, and I think that's the reason why I have Avondale where they're at. And it's mostly because of that schedule, and I think that's the reason where I have them at right now, is because the travel they got to make, and that's going to be very difficult for them going forward. Royal Oak, I got them at 2-7. I just think when you look at that schedule, I just think that they're making progress. The questions at line is, the line to me is the biggest question mark for Royal Oak. Can they make some strides there? If not, that could be trouble. And that's going to be the key for Coach Colin Campbell is the offensive line, the defensive line, can the lines gel? And then Pontiac, obviously, the struggles they've had, the quarterback issues a concern for me. They got the line. Quarterback and depth are my 2 biggest concerns with Pontiac. I just don't know if I see, that schedule is brutal for them. Could they surprise? Absolutely. Could some of these teams that are not in the playoffs overachieve and make the playoffs? Absolutely. I mean, Avondale could do it. Pontiac could do it. Royal Oak can do it. So you really look at it in the coaches poll, They have Ferndale as a favorite, Avondale 2, Berkeley 3, Royal Oak 4, Pontiac 5. But I think Avondale, they could make some noise. They could be a surprise team. I think Pontiac could be a team that could make some noise if things go right. I mean, like, obviously, you look at a team like Pontiac, if Waterford Kettering could be just in the nip of making the playoffs, I think Pontiac could be there. I think Pontiac could be there. They could surprise some people. So when you look at that division, really manageable division. Really, it's a competitive division. But I just think right now Ferndale, with the way, even though they got a young team, I think we have Coach John Jackson in there. It's a big deal. So we'll see what happens going forward. And then without further ado, let's introduce the top 10 rankings here. We look at the top teams here. Nobody in the gold division making the rankings here. Obviously, you look at the rankings to start. I think Adams right now, being with Ryland Waters back at quarterback. I know they got concerns up front. Probably my number 1 team. I think a lot of that's Ryland Waters. Harper Woods, my number 2 team. A lot of experience back. Obviously, on both sides of the ball, I think they're going to be very good there. Clarkston, my number 3 team. They got the offense. Defense, I'm concerned about. Stony Creek, I have number 4. I think the Cougars are a team that could really do some damage this year for Coach Rick Powell. I think they're going to be 4. I mean, I think it makes a lot of sense there. Oxford, number 5. People say, well, and I talked to my brother, Anthony Taormina, about this. He hosts History Now, like host on BT. He said, Sammy, you're putting Oxford over Lake Orion and West Bloomfield? Why? I said, well, the reason why Jack Hendricks, a lot of that is the reason why you got to establish a quarterback. I know Oxford's got concerns elsewhere. So that's a question mark there. So it'll be interesting to see how Oxford does. West Bloomfield, number 6. I think with the Lakers, you really look at what the Lakers have. Jamal Shakespeare at quarterback. Jamal Shakespeare playing everywhere. But if he has to play quarterback, that could spell trouble real quick. Lake Orion, number 7. I kind of look at Lake Orion. I kind of have them maybe too low in the rankings but I just think the question marks are there. Obviously quarterback, obviously mental psyche, obviously, and obviously scheme. Is it all going to click for the Dragons? This is a team that could make some noise, but I've got a lot of questions with Lake Orion, especially when it comes to mental mindset. Rochester, I'm really high on. This is a team that I think could be very dangerous. They return the quarterback in Matt Dykey. They have a very good line, good rushing attack. I think they're going to surprise some people this year. Watch out for Rochester. They're going to make some noise. North Farmington, I got number 9. Terrence James back. If he's got to play quarterback, that's trouble for North. Obviously, he got him at wide receiver. Big time question marks there for them. And then Oak Park at number 10 to start the year. Experience matters, and they got a lot of experience coming back. So we'll see what happens. So I think heading into week 1, Oak Park, you know what I mean? That could be really interesting to see how this goes. So anyway, we're signing off here. This is the Gold Division, and Kettering and Mott. Wish everybody the best of luck this year with those teams, those 7 teams this season. Of course, we have the blue next week, then the white in 2 weeks, and the red in 3 weeks. Take care, God bless, and I will see you all next week. God bless all.